What's a funny story that's been told throughout your family for years, maybe decades? My uncle used to tell the story of the time my grandfather was bitten by Sydney funnel web, highly venomous spider, before the antivenom was in use. My grandfather's co-workers bandaged the hand, and 3 of them bundled into a car to get him to a hospital in Sydney. They were in Lithgow. Partway through the journey, they get pulled over by a cop for speeding. The cop waltzes up to the passenger door, thinking he just caught some guys hooning around off work. The cop taps the window and asks if they knew what speed they were doing. The passenger in the front responds by holding up a jar with the spider inside and points to my grandfather's bandaged hand. The cop's eyes go wide as dinner plates, and he follows up with right. Follow me. The cop sprints back to his car, slams on his lights and sirens, and escorts them into Sydney in about half the time it would normally take. They all thought it was hilarious that the fastest the driver had ever driven was chasing a police car. When my father was a child, my grandfather had a gas station. At one point he decided to have a large sign put up to advertise. A large sign on a pole? The pole needed a foundation of concrete. The hole could have been dug by a backhoe, but there was an old-timer in the town who dug everything for people. Didn't matter what it was, he could probably dig it for you. By hand. So my grandfather hires him. The old-timer was a great digger. Worked hard and fast and dug a nearly perfectly square hole in the ground exactly the size and depth my grandfather needed. When the old-timer was done, he came to my grandfather wanting paid. My grandfather happily paid him and asked how the job had been. The old-timer said it was fine but hard on his piles. Piles is an old way of saying hemorrhoids. Without missing a beat, my grandfather said, "Oh, what's that? Hard on your piles of money?" The old guy laughed so hard and thanked my grandfather for the money and for the laugh. It's not super funny, but my grandfather was a good guy and everyone loved him in that town, and the story has been told many times over the years, and every time my father hears the word piles he laughs and says piles of money. This would have been in the early 1970s. My parents with my little sister were going camping with their trailer at a campground a couple hours south of our home. My younger brother was going to be coming down later in our second car to join them, because he had to come back to work before they would be coming back. On the way, my parents' car broke down and they were pulled off at the side of the road. This of course was before cell phones, but they figured my brother would be along soon and they'd be able to go get help. Soon enough they saw him coming, and they waited for him to stop. He must have been daydreaming or something because he never even saw them, and just blew straight on past. My folks were just gaping at each other in stunned amazement as he disappeared into the distance. He had no idea anything was wrong until he got to the campsite and they weren't there. He turned around and went back to look for them, but by the time he found them it was at least an hour later. Every time we tell that story, we all laugh so hard at the image of them watching helplessly as he just sped by, oblivious to their plight. I come from a line of smartasses and pranksters. The first instance of this that I'm aware of was from my grandpa on my dad's side. Years before I came along, my newly wedded parents were visiting grandma and grandpa. Dad, at the time, was driving a car with bench seats, and the passenger side door wasn't working properly. So as my parents were leaving, Mom opened the driver's side door to get in and slide across the seat. She was greeted by a snake and screamed for my dad. Grandpa was looking out the kitchen window, laughing so hard his face was red. It turned out he put it in the car to get my dad and got her instead. My next story involves my dad. This happened sometime way back in the 70s, still a few years before I was born. One of the neighbors asked my dad if my older brother would help her train her dog. My dad asked, and for the next few weeks, days, my brother was helping with the dog. Not long after this, she comes over one day and tells my dad, "Tell you son to stay away from my dog because it listens to him, but it won't listen to me." Dad replies with, "That's fine, you keep your dog over there and off my lawn because I'm tired of cleaning up its shit every day." Apparently she didn't listen, and over the next few days, she continued the routine of letting the dog out in the morning, the dog shitting on our lawn, etc. After about a week, Dad had enough and made a trip to the store. He got a pound of lunch meat and a box of X-Lax. Mixed it together and left it outside. Sure enough, like clockwork, the neighbor's dog trots over and takes a big dump on the lawn. This time he had a little snack and trotted back home. Pretty soon, according to Dad, every light in their place was coming on one after the other. I'm sure you can guess what happened. The dog lived, and the neighbor invested in a chain to tie the dog out to do its business from then on. My final tale involves me pranking my wife on April Fool's Day this year. I got up early while my wife was asleep to run some quick errands, and bought a bag of Tootsie Rolls from the store. When I got home, I formed and shaped a few of them to look like dog poops. I even ran them under warm water so they would have the right look to them. I then took my carefully crafted fake poops and left them on the bathroom floor and closed the door. Then waited for my wife to wake up. I didn't have to wait long before she woke up. Seconds later, I hear a knock. "What's wrong?" I called out. "The dog pooped in here," she yelled, sounding disgusted. "No problem, I'll get it," I yelled back, and walked into the bathroom. The look of disgust on her face when I picked it up with my bare hand was only topped by the look when I popped it in my mouth and started chewing it.